Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life. I want to talk today about anxiety, particularly the anxiety that comes to us in this time of year. It's often been said, I don't know who said this, maybe St. Teresa of Avila, she's as good a person as anybody, but somebody once said that peace is the surest sign of God's presence. Peace is the surest sign of God's presence. And so, if peace is the sign of God's presence, what is the opposite of peace? Of course, that's anxiety. And if peace is the sign of God's presence and anxiety is the opposite of peace, then it stands to reason that anxiety is the sign of Satan's presence. Not that Satan and God are opposite of one another, but you get the idea. And if you just stop and think for a moment of everything that causes anxiety in our life this time of year. The commercialization, certainly, of the Christmas season. Family relationships. It's the end of the semester in school. Work usually gets very busy this time of year, particularly if you are in the retail industry. Travel plans, planning a meal. There's 1,000,000,001 things that can take away our peace. And so, brothers and sisters, rest assured that Satan loves it when our mind and our heart is focused in this time on everything but the birth of Christ. Satan loves it when our hearts and our minds are focused on everything but the birth of Christ. Once I heard it put this way, and this is so shocking, but it drives the point home, I think. Once upon a time, this was at a different parish, it was none of you that did this, I'm sure, but once upon a time, somebody called the parish office, and they said, "Father, what is the earliest Mass that we can go to on Christmas Eve so that we can start," this was their exact words, "the real Christmas"? What is the earliest time that we can go to Mass on Christmas Eve so that we can start the real Christmas? See, this is the message that the world wants us to hear at this time of year, isn't it? That the real Christmas is about getting as many gifts as you can. Right? Not that gifts and giving gifts are bad. That's not what I'm saying. But our mind and our heart is taken off of the most important thing that this season is about. And of course, that is the coming of Christ. And so as we are enveloped, if you will, in this anxiety, the church gives us this holy and sacred time of Advent. Advent, I would say more than any other season, is this time where we really are invited and are called to settle our hearts, to calm our hearts. If it were up to me, I told this earlier this morning to the deacon at the 7:30 Mass. I told Deacon Stefan, I said, if it were up to me, I would turn off all of the lights in the church. God decided that we'd turn off the microphone. Maybe there's something that he's trying to tell me there. But if it were up to me, we would turn off all of these lights. Just enough that I could read the words on the page so that I could say the right prayers. There's something about being in darkness that necessarily orders our heart towards silence and stillness and peace, which I would suggest is precisely what we need in the midst of a very busy and a very noisy world. I don't know about you, but if someone were to ask me, "Father, what is your dream vacation?" Here's Father's dream vacation. I would go to Fairbanks, Alaska in the dead of winter. I looked this up the other day. What is the high temperature in Fairbanks, Alaska for this week? 10 below zero is the high temperature this week in Fairbanks, Alaska. And I said, that would be fantastic if I could just go up there, have a little cabin in the woods with a fireplace and an unlimited supply of hot chocolate, and just be there in silence and in peace for like a week. Why? Because we live in a very busy world. And so, brothers and sisters, what does the church invite us to in Advent? As I said, to resettle and to recalm our hearts. I don't know if recalm is a word, but it is now. The church invites us to settle ourselves, to enter into, if you will, a time of silence and peace. And so I want to encourage you to two things. I want to invite you to two things this Advent season. And I'm going to try to hold myself to this as well. The first is to take 15 minutes every day in silence. Maybe it's early in the morning, maybe it's late at night, maybe it's in the middle of the day, whenever it is, but to take 15 minutes to turn off all of the electronics every day and just be in the presence of God. That's the first thing. The second thing is related to it, but ramps it up a notch. That's my little challenge. Here's my big challenge, and this one is going to be the hard one for me too, but I just invite you to think about it and hold me accountable to doing this. At some point in this Advent season, I invite you and challenge you to take one 24-hour period where you turn everything off and you don't turn it on. You turn off your phone, you turn off your laptop, you turn off the TV, you turn off Netflix, you turn off the radio in the car, you turn it all off for 24 hours. And again, this is hard. I freely admit, this is, as I say this, I'm like, gosh, I don't know if I can do that. And that's really scary to think that we are so attached to this stuff that 24 hours without is a scary thought. But nonetheless, what happens when we do that? When we turn off all of these distractions, all of, as the gospel tells us, the anxieties of daily life, Satan, the one who loves when we are enveloped in anxiety, is also silenced. So who can speak? God can speak in the midst of silence. Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace, God who, again, I don't know what saint this is that said this, but the God of whom peace is the surest sign of his presence. I wish you each a happy Advent, a happy New Year, and may each one of us enter into this time of silent meditation so that our hearts can be raised to contemplation of the divine.